Casinos are not charities. Everything inside them, the layout, the lighting, the free drinks, the carpet patterns, the absence of clocks, the slot machine sounds, is engineered with one purpose: to separate you from your money, legally, permanently, and in a way that feels like entertainment while it's happening. The house edge is not an accident. It is a mathematical guarantee built into every game, every bet, every spin. Over enough time, the casino always wins. This is not a secret. It is the entire business model. So here's the question I want you to hold as this story starts. If casinos are built to be unbeatable, if the math is literally on their side, how did one man in a gray hoodie walk into 3 different Atlantic City casinos in 6 months and walk out with $15 million? Not by cheating, not by counting cards, not by any method that the casinos could use to justify keeping his money. He won legally. The contracts said so. The New Jersey Division of Gaming Enforcement said so. The casino lawyers who spent weeks trying to find a way out said so. Don Johnson beat 3 casinos at their own game, and they handed him the weapon to do it. But the part of this story that nobody talks about, the part that is more interesting than any single session at a blackjack table, is what it reveals about who actually controls the rules in any high-stakes negotiation. Spoiler, it is not always who you think. In 2006, Atlantic City casinos pulled in $5.2 billion, best year in the city's history. The boardwalk was loud, packed, profitable. Hotels were full. High rollers were everywhere. By 2010, revenues had dropped to $3.3 billion. Almost $2 billion gone in 4 years. The reasons were specific. First, the 2008 financial crisis. When people watched their 401ks collapse, they stopped driving to Atlantic City to gamble. Second, Pennsylvania legalized casinos. Suddenly, Philadelphia residents, historically a huge feeder market for Atlantic City, could gamble 15 minutes from home instead of 90. Some Atlantic City casinos closed. Others cut staff. All of them were having the same internal conversation. How do you bring the high rollers back when Las Vegas, Macau, and now Pennsylvania are all competing for the same wallets? The answer marketing departments landed on: better deals. Specifically, loss rebates. A loss rebate is a straightforward concept. If a high roller loses more than a threshold amount in a session, the casino refunds a percentage, typically 10 to 15%. You lose $100,000, you get $10,000 back. Your net loss is $90,000 instead of $100,000. The casino makes less profit but still makes profit. It's a discount on losing, an incentive to show up and play big. The math behind loss rebates is well understood in the industry. Done correctly, they do not threaten the house edge, they just reduce the margin. Atlantic City casinos had been conservative about them for years. In 2010, with revenues in free fall and high rollers shopping their action around the country, conservative went out the window. Don Johnson is not a celebrity gambler or a trust fund kid with a reckless habit. He's a professional. He ran Philadelphia Park Racetrack. He managed computerized wagering systems for horse racing. He spent years as a gaming regulator in multiple states. He understands the mathematics of gambling at a level that most gamblers, and apparently some casino executives, do not. In late 2010, his phone starts ringing. Area code 609, Atlantic City. Tropicana calls first, then Borgata, then Caesars, each one offering something special for premium players. Each one, in their desperation, competing against the others without knowing what the others were offering. Johnson listens to each pitch, takes notes, asks clarifying questions, makes no commitments. Then he does something that separates him from every other high roller those casino hosts called that week. He calls mathematicians, PhD-level probability theorists. He gives them the exact conditions each casino is offering: deck count, dealer rules, betting limits, loss rebate percentage, rebate threshold, and asks them to run simulations. What is the precise mathematical edge under these terms? Who has the advantage, and by how much? The answer comes back from one set of terms in particular. Terms that one of the casinos, in its desperation, had offered without fully running the numbers itself. With a 20% loss rebate on losses above $500,000, combined with specific rule modifications, the player has the edge. Not the house. The player. Johnson reads the report. Then he reads it again. Then he calls all three casinos back and tells them he wants to negotiate. Johnson arrives at each casino meeting in the same outfit. Hoodie, jeans, baseball cap, no watch, no jewelry, no performance of wealth. This is deliberate. Casino hosts are trained to read high rollers. They expect ego. They expect men who want recognition, VIP treatment, the performance of being important. That expectation shapes how they negotiate. They assume the whale wants to feel special, and they spend their negotiating capital on making him feel special. Johnson wants none of that. He wants specific contractual terms. Each meeting follows the same sequence. The casino host outlines their offer, 20% loss rebate on sessions where Johnson loses more than $500,000. Johnson says, "Sounds interesting, but I'd like to adjust a few things." First adjustment. The dealer stands on soft 17. Most casinos have dealers hit soft 17, a rule that improves the house edge by roughly 0.2%. A small number, across millions of hands, a significant one. Second, Johnson can re-split aces. Standard blackjack doesn't allow this. The ability to re-split reduces the house edge by another fraction of a percent. Third, late surrender is available. If Johnson doesn't like his hand, he can surrender half his bet and walk away from the hand. Another small edge reduction. Each casino agrees to each point. None of them are running the cumulative math as the concessions stack up. They see a high roller asking for pillow preferences. They don't see the mathematical architecture being constructed. Then Johnson makes one more request. The 20% rebate should apply per session. Not per trip, not per month, per session. Each time he sits down is a fresh accounting period. If he loses $500,000 in a session, he gets the rebate immediately. Next session starts at 0. The casino host pauses briefly. Thinks it through. If anything, this encourages Johnson to keep coming back. Multiple sessions, multiple chances to get his money. Agreed. What the host has not understood is the strategic consequence of per-session resets. Johnson can now control exactly when to stop. He can bank wins without the rebate clock running, and he can limit his exposure on losing sessions to exactly the rebate threshold, after which the 20% cushion kicks in and changes the math entirely. All three casinos sign. All three make the same mistake. Then he calls all three casinos back and tells them he wants to negotiate. Johnson's playing strategy is not complicated to describe. The complexity is in the discipline required to execute it without deviation. He plays perfect basic strategy, the mathematically optimal decision for every possible hand combination. No hunches, no intuition, no adjusting because he feels hot or cold. Every decision determined by a table of probabilities that has been calculated and recalculated by generations of mathematicians. He sets session targets. If he's up $500,000, he stops. Banks the win. Leaves the table. The rebate clock doesn't run on wins, only on losses. So there is no cost to stopping when ahead. If he's losing, he watches the threshold. At $500,000 down, the 20% rebate kicks in, returning $100,000. His net loss is $400,000. That rebate changes the expected value of every hand played in a losing session. It is effectively a subsidy that makes his losing sessions cheaper and his winning sessions worth keeping. Over 6 months, he rotates between the three casinos. Caesars first, 2 sessions, $450,000 and $600,000 profit. Then Borgata, multiple sessions, net positive. Then Tropicana, where the biggest session waits. April 2011. He sits down at Tropicana at 10 in the morning. He plays for 12 hours. By 3 p.m., he's up $2.1 million. Management has called in game protection experts to review the footage for card counting. They find nothing. He is playing basic strategy, Legal, standard, unimpeachable. By 6 p.m., he is up $3.8 million. A pit boss asks if he would like a break, some dinner. He thanks them and says no. They cannot force him to stop. The contract does not allow it. By 10 p.m., the Tropicana CEO is in the security room watching the feed. He asks his mathematicians to run the contract terms and tell him if the deal was positive expectation for the player. It is the right question. It is 12 hours too late. At 10 p.m., Johnson is dealt 2 eights against a dealer showing 6. He splits, doubles down on both. The dealer draws to 16 and busts. He wins $400,000 on a single hand. He stands up, tells them he is done. Total for the session: $5.8 million, Tropicana's largest single-session loss in its history. Across all 3 casinos, over 6 months, $15 million. All legal, all contracted, all paid. The week after the Tropicana session, the calls start. Casinos comparing notes. Borgata had lost over $5 million to Johnson. Caesars, $4 million. 3 companies, $15 million, 1 player. Legal teams assembled, contracts pulled, every word examined. The reviews went quickly because the contracts were clear. Johnson had followed every term exactly as written. He had played basic strategy, legal. He had used the rebate as specified, contractual. He had stopped when he wanted, his right under the agreement. There was no clause he had violated, no rule he had bent. Casinos threatened lawsuits anyway. Tropicana went the furthest, with their lawyers floating the argument that the contracts represented something close to fraud, that Johnson had concealed his mathematical advantage in the negotiation. Johnson's attorney pointed out the obvious. He had negotiated for specific terms. The casinos had agreed to those terms. Both parties had equal access to mathematicians. The casino's failure to run the numbers was not Johnson's legal liability. The New Jersey Division of Gaming Enforcement investigated. Their conclusion was brief. Completely legal. No cheating, no card counting, no violation of any rule or law. The threatened lawsuits never materialized. Lawyers on all sides understood that any case would almost certainly result in Johnson keeping the money and the casinos absorbing both the loss and the public embarrassment of suing a man for winning at their own table under a contract they had signed. Tropicana fired its CEO. All 3 casinos immediately canceled their high roller rebate programs. Loss rebates across Atlantic City were capped at 10% permanently. Johnson was banned from all 3 casinos and, through industry blacklists, effectively from every major gambling venue worldwide. He kept all $15 million. The way this story gets told, and the competitor version tells it this way too, is as a gambling story. A man who beat the house. The audacity of it. The $5.8 million session. The 12-hour marathon. The pit boss with the phone to his ear. That's not the story I think matters most here. The story that matters is what happened before Johnson sat down at any table. In the negotiation. In the 3 meetings where he walked into rooms full of casino executives and came out with contracts that flipped the mathematical edge in his direction. Think about the power dynamic in those rooms. On one side, multi-billion-dollar corporations with decades of experience, teams of lawyers, in-house mathematicians, decades of institutional knowledge about how to structure deals. On the other side, one man in a hoodie. The casinos lost those negotiations completely, not because Johnson outmuscled them, because they needed him more than he needed them. That is the leverage nobody talks about. Atlantic City was in freefall. Every high roller with money had options. Vegas, Macau, Pennsylvania, online. The casinos were calling Johnson. He was not calling them. He could walk away from any deal that didn't meet his mathematical requirements. They could not walk away from a deal because they needed the revenue, needed the optics of high roller activity, needed to believe they were getting a whale. Desperation is the most reliable negotiating disadvantage in existence. When you need the deal more than the other person does, you will give concessions you cannot afford. You will agree to terms you haven't fully analyzed. You will mistake the appearance of a win, A big player at your table, cameras rolling, for an actual win. The casinos had the mathematical expertise to run those numbers. They chose not to, or ran them incorrectly, because they were focused on closing the deal rather than understanding the deal they were closing. Don Johnson did not beat the casinos at blackjack. He beat them in a conference room. The blackjack was just the paperwork. Don Johnson still has the money. He is still, as far as public record shows, the only player in the history of Atlantic City to win more than $15 million in a 6-month period without cheating. Tropicana went through bankruptcy proceedings in the years following the incident and eventually closed. Atlantic City as a whole continued its decline. Several more casinos shuttered in the years after 2011. The rebate programs that created Johnson's edge are gone, restructured into formats that casino mathematicians have stress-tested against exactly the kind of analysis Johnson commissioned. The casinos learned. The specific vulnerability no longer exists. But the underlying dynamic. Desperate party needs a deal. Counterpart knows it, understands the math, and negotiates accordingly. That never goes away. It shows up in every salary negotiation where a company is under pressure to fill a role. In every real estate transaction where the seller has already bought the next house. In every vendor relationship where switching costs make the client captive. The house edge is real. In gambling and everywhere else. The math is usually against you. But the math is written by people. And people who are desperate enough will let you rewrite it. The only question is whether you're paying enough attention to know when they've handed you the pen.